Okay, whatever. Imagine there's an S there. I just broke it. In this episode of Minecraft Explains, we are going to be talking about the relationship between economic growth and environmental degradation, framed by the Environmental Kuznets Curve. Also known as the EKC, the Environmental Kuznets Curve is a hypothesis which suggests that after a positive correlation of economic growth and environmental degradation, there should be a turning point in development where the degradation reduces. It runs on the assumption that a nation has to go through industrialization to shift the economy of the country. The hypothesis argues that middle-income countries have more pollution than higher-income countries. Now, that isn't necessarily true, and I will get to the critiques later. The EKC uses the x-axis as economic growth and environmental degradation on the y-axis, showing an inverse U-curve. This splits the Environmental Kuznets Curve into three sections, or effects, showing the shift from agricultural to industrial to service sectors. The three effects are named the scale effect, the technological effect, and the composition effect. The scale effect, which is the first third of the curve, shows the initial increase of environmental degradation. The agricultural sector is often represented in this stage where environmental degradation comes with land use change. In this stage, the economy focuses on increasing output, which requires increased inputs, which uses more natural resources. So to put this simply, I'll title it like this: Increased development equals increase degradation. The technological effect, which is in the middle section of this graph, shows that the increased efficiency kickstarts the turning point of environmental degradation, which is here. In this stage, economies shift from an agricultural to an industrial sector, hypothesized to prioritize decreasing costs and maximizing profit for the resources, aiming for higher outputs with less inputs, which I will summarize it as higher efficiency equals less resources and less degradation. The last effect is a composition effect, and it depicts the movement of the economy from the industrial to service sectors, which on paper reduces emissions without compromising their GDP. So to summarize, I'll title this as, that's not centered, but whatever. Replacing industrial emissions, oh my days, with service emissions equals less environmental natural resources, please. Oh, my days, there's not enough space. Okay, whatever. Imagine there's an S there. I just broke it. Okay, this is the best I can do. Don't break it. Do not punch. Do not punch. I'm going to stay far away. Don't punch. Now I can punch. While there are some logic to this curve, there's a few problematic assumptions that the EKC doesn't always play out as the country develops. As I mentioned earlier, EKC argues that middle-income countries have higher emissions. While this may be true to a certain extent, namely looking at China and India, wealthier countries often export their pollution-intensive productions to middle-income or poorer countries, reducing their emissions in the process. This is also called the pollution haven hypothesis, which hypothesizes that as a developed nation have stricter environmental enforcements, which increases cost of natural resources and production, large income countries and companies will relocate their factories to countries with lower environmental standards. The EKC doesn't cover the global picture, which includes a movement of greenhouse gases from developed to developing countries. So even if a country seems to have low environmental degradation and are in the service sector, their CO2 per capita may be higher than the CO2 per capita of middle-income countries with high environmental degradation. The EKC may show correlation on some indications such as water, air pollution, and perhaps some ecological footprint. But there is weak correlation for other indicators such as biodiversity, land use change, and other ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are basically goods and services provided by our ecosystem to us. It's like every benefit they can provide that spans from income or economic benefit to like exercise and being able to run in the park. Might make another video on ecosystem services, but that's like PTSD from undergrad. Many criticize the EKC as almost optimistic, as there's no guarantee that greater wealth reduces resources and environmental impacts. As we produce more, the more we consume, exhibited by how predominantly high-income countries have the highest CO2 emissions per capita. Many economists argue that there isn't really a tipping point, making the curves plateau instead, or continue to increase in a positive trajectory. Overall, the evidence that increased economy decreases degradation is actually quite weak. So why is this important information? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, I made a video last week about renewable energy and mentioned EKC, so I thought it might be relevant to have a follow-up as a general review as to what this actually is. Secondly, it is interesting to know what the different perspectives are regarding sustainable development could be. And lastly, understanding the critiques around EKC, and I only covered, well, a fraction of it, I'm sure there are many more. It is important to be aware of how the data can be skewed and how conclusions like the EKC might not show the full picture. And unfortunately, the world cares a lot about money and growth. So maybe we need to put our heads together and actually reduce environmental impacts as economies rise. Or maybe we need degrowth. The conclusion is yours to make. I personally don't really have an opinion on this, on whether the EKC is like a worthy hypothesis to be focusing on. I'm not like the biggest fan of it, but yeah, I think it's mostly because there are some fundamental flaws that I think well, I just don't necessarily agree on. I also think that we have the tech to make the industrial sector not as environmentally damaging. And if the EKC process takes place with like renewable energy and all that, so hopefully we don't need to like industrialize that much. And hopefully focusing on stuff like circular economy, reducing waste and consumption in general is probably a better mindset to have. Yeah, I also wrote this script like last night, and I'm filming it in the morning right now. Oh my days. I'm filming it in the morning. So I'm like double mumble jumbled and I don't know what's going on. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and yeah, like and subscribe if you guys find this interesting. Bye.